Taking the lead, though, Newsday first reported last night that the Mets could pursue Japanese Babe Ruth Shohei Ohtani this offseason. Because he is so young, he'll only make a rookie salary beyond that $20 million posting fee, meaning basically that pretty much any team can afford him, but a place like New York could make sense with endorsements. And when I say he's the Japanese Babe Ruth, it's because scouts, Todd, say that this guy is elite potentially as a pitcher and a hitter. How do you think that dynamic might work in the big leagues?
I've seen him play. I think he is pretty dynamic on both sides of the field, but I still don't think Major League Baseball, at least over here, is ready for a two-way player. I mean, Hunter Green at 17 was probably the closest mix going into the draft this year, and they even at that point said he wasn't going to be a guy that they wanted to try out both sides of the ball. This guy's a great talent, but I think he's going to have to pick one or the other.
Anthony, correct me if I'm wrong. Aren't fans going to be clamoring as soon as this guy's struggling on either side of the ball, if he does come to the big leagues and do both? Fans are going to be saying, why doesn't he stop hitting, focus on pitching, or the other way around? It seems like we don't even know how to deal with something like that.
Right, or they're going to want him, Doug, to have more at-bats. Say he's really raking as a hitter. They're going to say, well, come on now. I know it's his throw day, but, he's got to play right field today, too, so he can hit. And, so it'll be interesting to see how they handle it. And, I mean, good luck explaining to your owner if this guy fouls a ball off of his shin and then can't make his start, if he's as a hitter. And so there's a lot of things to consider here. It's going to be a fascinating winter to see what happens with this guy.
Do you think teams will sign him hoping he'll be both, or are teams scouting him on one side of the ball thinking that that's where the most upside is?
I think the most upside is pitcher. That's what the general thought is, I think, and from guys I've talked to who have seen him play in Japan and scouted him on video and that sort of thing. However, I think there is wiggle room to, at least tell him, you're going to get your at-bats, and so come to us because we'll let you hit. And I don't think that the league, I know there's a sort of narrative out there that the league would make a difference. Obviously the AL because of the DH. Well, I mean, not necessarily. I mean, the guy would get his at-bats on the day he pitches. He could play the outfield on it for an NL team. And then there are all those pinch hitting opportunities, which may be a really good way to sort of make hitting not, go into the pitching, not affect the pitching that much.
And we're going to hear from Sandy Alderson in just a second, Todd, but one of the things he talks about is the downside of this potential. Because he's coming over from Japan, because of all the unknown, because of the dynamic skill set, there's going to be a lot of pressure on him from the fans specifically. How do you see that going? How can you manage that if you're interested in signing a guy like that?
Well, I just think on the pitching side, there's less to go wrong as far as having an ultra talent coming over here to be able to adjust to the major league level. With a guy, even a great hitter in Japan, a great hitter anywhere, until they get to the big leagues, they haven't proven themselves to be a great hitter. And there's ways to expose a guy's swing that, a guy that throws 100 and has got great stuff and he's got a presence on the mound is a guy that you can bid for success a lot more easily than you can a guy at the plate. So I think pitching is going to be his strength, but look, it's going to depend on whether or not he's stubborn enough to say, look, I want to be able to play both ways, or I'm not going to sign with somebody. There's going to be somebody out there that'll at least take that bait to get him on the team.
Well, as I just mentioned, Sandy Alderson spoke today down at the GM meetings just about this situation with Ohtani. Take a listen.
I certainly wouldn't rule ourselves out at this point, but that's going to be a very complicated proposition for anybody that is interested. And again, I think it's a little early to know exactly what those complications are, even because the basic parameters haven't been set. I think there's still a lot to be learned in his situation and how it potentially will unfold. But to sit here today and say no, we're not interested, I think would be foolish.
And let's welcome in beardless man Andy Martino from down in Orlando. Andy, we just heard from Sandy Alderson. You are down there. How realistic are the chances Ohtani with the Mets could actually be a fit in your mind?
Well, it's certainly a fit, Doug. The issue there is that Ohtani fits 30 clubs. And I say that because he is ridiculously inexpensive due to these unique circumstances of the posting system and the international bonus caps. So really, for what he's capable of doing, which according to the evaluators is to be potentially high-end pitcher and also a capable everyday position player, who wouldn't want that? It would be criminally negligent to be a general manager at this this stage and not interested in this player. But what I felt standing there in front of Alderson this morning, what I felt that he was doing more than anything else was trying to tamp down expectations. Not because the Mets aren't interested, not because they're not a possibility for this player, but simply because every team wants this guy at what the price is going to be. And it's going to be weeks of fascinating negotiations, unlike any that we've ever seen. So to handicap it now, nobody would be foolish enough to try to do that.
And something you mentioned in your column on SNYTV.TV about this was his representation with CAA. Andy, is that leverage for the Mets, or is that just a fact? That's who he's represented by, and that could just go into negotiations no matter what team he's dealing with?
Yeah, it was a great column. Thank you for mentioning it. One of the many brilliant points that I made, Doug, was that agency connection. And the reason I brought that in the Mets' relationship with CAA and how many players they have, Cespedes, DeGrom, Syndergaard, Tebow, who are connected there, is really to help. I'm trying to help the public and us set up for what to expect over the next couple of weeks as this unfolds, because there will be more news. This will have legs, and one of those news items will be the Mets are going to meet with these representatives about many things. Ohtani will be discussed, people will get excited, and that's going to be part of this process for sure. Now, that's not something that's going to land Ohtani with the Mets, but in this case, it's not going to hurt, because the agents here have to be really creative in terms of how can they create revenue for this player that's not salary. And they'll have to work with the teams in ways that the teams are going to have to be really careful with, so they don't step outside the lines, but like either corporate partnerships that can be used, either endorsements in a particular market that can be brought in. The Mets have New York, which is a tremendous advantage, of course. Now, the Yankees are already also a huge brand in New York, so that's something else for the Mets to contend with. But the agency piece is one of many things in this very complicated puzzle.
Ohtani can only hope to have as many endorsements and sneaker deals as Andy Martino. Andy from down in Orlando, we appreciate it. Good stuff. Thanks. And we're going to let Toyota tell you just a little bit more information about this guy. He's just 23 years old, which is the cause of the cheapness of his deal, his potential contract. He was the MVP in 2016, three-time All-Star, and oh yeah, was named both the best pitcher and DH 2 seasons ago.